When we come into the world as children, as toddlers, we reach out for belonging. And when you watch a toddler who's in a healthy family context understand his belonging, he switches from a tantrum to being happy and playing and not living in shame of the tantrum he just had, because he understands that he belongs. He doesn't question his sonship. He doesn't hustle for it. He's not trying to impress anyone. He hasn't learned that yet. He hasn't learned that he has to actually attain belonging through hustling and selling himself. That comes along later through all of our fear and isolation and shame. We learn to basically have separate lives. The one that I truly live inside myself that nobody sees, and the one that I present to people.
The clip at the beginning of today's episode was Amanda Cook from the film A View from the Hill, the film that's part of the Beatitudes Project. She's an amazing artist and songwriter who helped me write the song for this theme, The Pure in Heart. What do you think, Brian?
I think it was beautiful. I love what Amanda is saying there. And it made me think of the reality that children come out trusting. Like children naturally trust until somebody shows them it's not safe to trust. Until somebody breaks that trust. Then we start hiding, we start isolating. And as she said, we start hustling and trying to earn our identity. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. And that's not the way we come out. We come out trusting.
Right. That's incredible. So just kind of taking a step back into what we're looking at this week, the pure in heart and purity of heart. Yeah, what's the scripture say there?
Yeah, let's take a look at Matthew 5, verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And the Message translates it this way. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and your heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world.
So I'm very familiar with kind of growing up in Sunday school and stuff like that. And if I ever heard about pure in heart, I always felt dirty. Like not pure, not poor. Dirty, not pure. Yeah. Because I know myself, right? There's this scripture in Psalm 24. It says this: who can climb Mount God? Who can scale the holy north face? Only the clean-handed, only the pure-hearted, men who won't cheat and women who won't seduce. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can never live up to being clean like that, but maybe I'm getting it wrong, because, the announcements in the Beatitudes are like invitations and announcements of presence, and like it's all grace and it's all mercy. And so the idea of sort of like counting yourself out is not part of the picture. It's not part of the Beatitudes. And so I wondered if we look at the Beatitudes and as something to attain and achieve, like if only I can get better, if only I can be better, I think we're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. We're kind of missing the point of them when Jesus is announcing that God is on our side. And so this idea of the heart and the pure in heart and that they shall see God, I'd love to see God, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, like even just to know that it's true and real. Yeah. So there's this heart and there's this seeing God, and it's like, well, it's kind of like they're lofty things, and I'm not sure that I can be pure in heart. And of course, I'm thinking about like a moral purity, if you like, or something that you can do in your own strength, strive for, or stuff like that. And I'm not sure that this is about living a set of rules perfectly, And I know that C.S. Lewis, like if we're talking about sexual sin, for instance, that, C.S. Lewis said it's the least of all sins. The greatest of sins is pride, and with that, and then with what Eugene Peterson says in the Message when he says that you're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart put right, then you can see God on the outside world. There's this idea that perhaps this is about what's going on the inside is different to what's going on the outside, and perhaps that a pure heart is an undivided heart. And so looking at what divides the heart, the great psychologist Carl Jung, he talked about persona and shadow, and talks about how the heart divides when we experience shame and regret for the first time. And so we never want to experience that again. So we put them down in the shadow and we learn to behave so that we don't experience shame and regret again. So that can become quite manipulative as we get older, right? So we learn to behave how to be accepted, how to be liked. You know, I'm not going to say what I really think because you won't like that. So, you know, I'm going to put on a show. And so the idea of true self and false self, you know, that, like I said, what is going on the inside is different to what's going on the outside. And I think that's an unpure heart.
Man, that's so powerful. And if, like you're saying, a pure heart is an undivided heart, then we have to admit the fact that many times we live with broken hearts. And what breaks our hearts? And then how do we reconcile all those broken pieces?
Well, I think that Amanda hinted at something in that intro clip from the film, and where she talks about children, right? And we see Jesus, you know, kind of turning the world on its head all the time, right? But then he's kind of, you know, the disciples are kind of saying, you know, keep the children away. You know, we don't want to bother Jesus. And he's saying, no, let the children come to me. Like, if you don't see the kingdom like they do, you have no part of it. You know, and so there's something about children. Now, being a dad, I've had those times when you have babies and, you know, 1 minute they are having the biggest tantrum because they're hungry or something that they can't communicate, you know, and then 30 seconds later they're nestling in your neck, Googling and so, but what they're doing is that they're being completely transparent. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and then when they're getting a bit older and they're in their toddler stage and they want an ice cream and you don't give them one, and so they have a tantrum. Like, they are being completely honest with you, you know, and you know, a few minutes later when they're sitting in front of their painting again, they're completely fine, right? And so that gets beaten out of us as we get older. That we find it more and more difficult to show our true selves and to be honest and vulnerable and to really experience the world like a child is the aim of this kind of idea about being pure in heart. But not that we like have tantrums all the time and kind of create problems, but just this idea of experiencing the world through the eyes that perceive awe and wonder and mystery and like this world that is bigger than you, but somehow you're connected to it. So I remember being at my grandma's house when I was a little kid and just being fascinated by like the rooms seemed bigger, right? They weren't. They were the same as our house, but you know, the rooms seemed bigger and there was more things to have adventures in. You know, their garden was different. They had different walls in the garden and, you know, you could play your hide and seek, whatever, and just be. I just remember that feeling of being, of having that wonder and awe of like being in this space that's bigger than you. And I think that as we get older, you know, we can lose that sense of wonder, and we have glimpses of it, right? So, and maybe it's when we are on a hilltop and we see a sunset, or maybe it's around the dinner table with friends and we get into a conversation that lasts forever and we never want it to stop. You know, we're like connecting to something that's bigger than us. And they're the moments to be present to in terms of the invitation of blessed are the pure in heart, in terms of like, let your heart become whole again through this idea of awe and wonder and mystery.
That's beautiful. I think of Heschel when he wrote, awe is a sense for the transcendence. And there's these times that, like you're talking about, where we experience awe. And if we can just sit up and pay a little bit of attention, we can recognize, oh my goodness, we're on the verge of something way bigger than what's happening right here. And there's an invitation in that. Like, wonder brings with it an invitation. Bernard Longerin wrote about this method, if you will. He has it as a theological method, but I think it applies the same for living. Like, when we're confronted with wonder, we get curious about it and we ask questions like, why is this moving me? Why am I feeling this? What's going on inside? And then we take the time to just see, to stop, to listen, to hear the response. And then coming out of that, then take some more time to just appreciate it. So often we don't have that time in life. Like, oh my goodness, that sunset was beautiful. Let me quick Instagram it, and then I'm back to whatever I'm doing. And this summer, my family and I spent some time camping on Lake Michigan, and watching the sunset over the lake. It would just go on and on and on. Even after the sun had gone below the horizon, there's still another half hour of colors dancing in the skies. And it was breathtaking and beautiful, and we could have rushed right by and missed it. But we took the time to appreciate it.
Think about the story of Moses and the burning bush, like being out in the desert, being a shepherd, or what? He was a shepherd, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For a long time, he would have seen some crazy things, maybe some bushfires, maybe, in the past. But there was something about that fire that he noticed, and he took time to see, right? And so he goes towards it, and he's kind of wondering about it, he's curious about it. Like, why isn't this bush burning up? Right? And then God speaks to him, and then take off your shoes. This is holy ground. And of course, the whole earth is holy ground. But what Heschel would say is that we meet God in the moment. We meet God in time, not in the created space, right? So it is in moments. And it's in moments of awe and wonder and curiosity and mystery. That's where we meet with God, where He can speak to us and say, "Take off your shoes. This is holy ground." And I think it's those moments that, little by little, that shame and regret that we've carried. A lot of us from very young ages. The first time you ever get told off, maybe, and then you begin this journey of learning how to be different. And to put on a show, and we live with that for so long, we don't even know we're doing it sometimes. But we've got this mask on, we're putting on a show, and it reminds me of Jesus, how compassionate He was to the people who had fallen in sin. The woman at the well, the woman who was going to be stoned. He is very compassionate and empathetic towards people who have had moral failure, and yet He's really tough on pride and the teachers of the law who think they're better than everybody else because they're putting on a show every day.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I think one of the aspects of pride is that it seeks independence. It doesn't want to be known for, I don't want to be known for my true self, so I'm going to put on this front and I'm seeking independence. I want to stay alone. And thinking, as we were talking about children have no problem realizing they're dependent on their parents for everything, right? For everything. I need, food. I need to go to the bathroom. I need this. They have no problem recognizing, admitting their dependence on their parents. But as we grow, we kind of, become independent. But the goal of Christian maturity is not independence.
That's good.
The goal of Christian maturity is recognizing our moment by moment dependence.
No more fake personas, and no more false perceptions. When all
So this idea of that this isn't just about moral purity, but it's about the divided heart. I don't want to pass by the fact that actually having a good moral compass is not a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're seeing in the news right now, people that have hidden terrible things that they've done to women or children in their careers. And, so I'm not saying that it gives us a free pass to behave however we want. I'm actually saying that if we receive this invitation to put our hearts back together, those things will not seem as important as living from a whole heart,
Yeah, and I agree. And I believe that as our hearts are mended and unified, we will live from a place of love and we will live in love. And as Jesus said, love does no wrong to a neighbor. Love's therefore the fulfillment of the law, right? When we're living from love and for love, we aren't going to be wronging our neighbors.
Yeah.
So we will be then living with a good moral compass.
Right. That's good. I think it's amazing that this pure in heart idea, this divided or undivided heart idea comes after mercy, because we just continue like in that vein of showing mercy to ourselves and to others. And especially if we're talking about the places that are in our shadow, like our shame and our regret. Can we find the way to show mercy to our shadow and to, be honest and vulnerable and bring it out into the light? Let the light of Christ shine on us and shine in our darkest places. Can we be kind to ourselves? Can we be that self-aware? Or are we just going to continue beating ourselves up all the time?
That's so good. So I think there's that pronouncement that God's light is shining on us and in us. And along with that, the invitation just to open our hearts more and more to that unifying work of God in our hearts. And I think of Brene Brown, who wrote that by and large, most people are really doing the best they can. And we don't know their history or their story or what's happened to them. And if we did, we'd probably say, yeah, you're doing the best you can getting through life. You might be limping through life a little bit, but you're really giving it the best effort that you know how. And you may have a broken heart too. And God wants to come and mend your heart and put the pieces back together. So if we can say yes to the kindness and grace of God in our hearts, that makes us so much more willing to say yes to the kindness and goodness and grace of God in other people's lives, putting their hearts back together.
It's really good. So, when I think about God's light shining on us, sometimes like if we're not ready for that, or like we might feel like, oh no, we're going to be found out, or I'm going to feel judged or uncovered, but that's not the kind of light that God shines, is it?
No. I don't think the light comes in as a condemning light.
Yeah.
I think of it more as a light that allows things to come to life,
Yes.
to flourish. Like my wife loves to garden, and if we didn't have enough sunlight, she wouldn't have a very nice garden. But to watch these little plants that she's planted months ago now, as they've enjoyed a summer full of sunlight, they're flourishing and they're covered in flowers and they're growing like crazy. And I think that's part of what this picture of light is about. It's communicating a source of life and warmth and heat and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so the light of God is not trying to catch us out, is it?
Mm-mm.
It's trying to reveal the truth that's already in us.
Yeah.
And I love what Amanda says in the song that we wrote together. She says, no more fake personas, no more false perceptions. All you ever wanted was me. So with childlike eyes of wonder and a heart that's undivided, I'm beginning to see you. The idea of blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed is the undivided heart, for they shall see God. And, I don't see these things as, being fulfilled immediately. It's like we're on a journey, like the horizon says your heart will be put together and be whole, but we're taking steps along that way. And, with every step, a little bit more awe and wonder, a little bit more of God's light, and a little bit less of the fake persona and the false perception.
That's so good. And when we stop hustling for identity and we start really receiving the announcement that we are worthy of love, then we can begin to experience true belonging.
Yes.
Because, again, as Brene Brown has written, most of the time we settle for just fitting in.
Right.
And fitting in is very different than actually belonging. Fitting in requires me to say, what do you want from me? And I'm going to be that for you. Belonging says, I'm bringing my true self, and I know that I'm accepted. And that's what we have, the pronouncement here that God is with us, God is for us, and the invitation to live from our true selves with other people and to accept other people living from their true selves.
So good.
Now I see you everywhere, 'cause you are everywhere. Winter, spring, bittersweet, you're here with me. Now I see you everywhere, 'cause you are everywhere. Winter, spring, bittersweet, you're here with me. I see you everywhere, 'cause you are everywhere. Winter, spring, bittersweet, you
So instead of living from a place of a divided heart, the invitation is to journey with God towards living from a place with a unified and a whole heart. A heart that's been mended, a heart that's been put back together, a heart that now trusts that it's loved, a heart that trusts that it's worthy, a heart that trusts that it can hear the voice of God speaking to it. A heart that from that place can pray as the psalmist, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. So we just want to encourage you today or this week that you would take some time, find a quiet place and really take a few deep breaths. Just quiet your mind and think about the outrageous nature of divine grace and mercy. Think about the reality that you are accepted exactly as you are. Brendan Manning said it this way: we're loved exactly as we are and not as we should be, because none of us are as we should be. And in that quiet place, I would encourage you to even ask the Lord to speak to you in a very personal way. Say, Lord, how do you see me that I need to see myself? Search me, Lord, you know me. Speak your truth to me and transform me that I might live from a place of a pure and unified heart.
It's so good. Thank you, Brian.